Should you skip the Nvidia RTX 3000 series and wait for the 4000 series? I'm not going to hype up the 4000 series because we really care about stock and availability, but many people are really mad about what happened with RTX 3000. Let's talk about what's going on now and what the future holds for us. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Remember to subscribe and smash that like button. They say every time you do, the RTX 4000 series gets a little bit further away. I think that's what we really want. Now, some people are already hyping up the RTX 4000 series, like the 4090, saying it's going to be a huge performance leap, etc. I'll be honest with you, I care almost nothing about what type of performance is coming that far ahead. Simply put, we as gamers, and I'm with you guys, we really want to see stock and availability of what's going on now. We're more than happy with the performance of the 3070, 3080, even the AMD 6000 series GPUs. Performance certainly is not the issue. It's not like there are a massive amount of games out there really taking advantage of crazy performance. So when people start hyping up the performance of the RTX 4000 series, I just try to block that out because that's so far out there. It's so different and alien to what we actually want right now, which simply is good stock and availability and pricing of GPUs that have been pretty much recently released. So let's answer the question. Should you skip the RTX 3000 series GPU? And the same question can hold true for the AMD 6000 series, like the 6800, 6900 XT. So let's answer this question based on what you currently have, as well as other pertinent factors that are going on in the market. So first, if you currently have something from the 20 series, something like a 2060 all the way up to a 2080 Ti, or one of the previous generation Titans or something like that, I really do think you probably are more than okay holding off on the RTX 3000 and waiting until something better comes along, or perhaps, as people usually strategize, when RTX 4000 comes along, that means that the 3000 goes down in price. Usually, it hasn't recently, but usually that's supposed to happen. So you may be able to nag a 3080 or a 3090 at a bit of a discount with people selling them in order to buy the new generation. So let's look at it objectively. An RTX 2060, which is, still a pretty good GPU, pretty much for most games. It can even do some very mild 4K. Most people are probably playing at 1440p or below with that GPU. Are there really any games that are absolutely stressing that GPU where it becomes unplayable? We can say that Cyberpunk 2077, definitely one of the more demanding games that came out. It's going to stress at 4K, even an RTX 3090 if you put on all the bells and whistles like ray tracing and things of that nature. But you can certainly get away with having a very enjoyable experience aside from the bugs, a very enjoyable graphical experience. How's that? That's a little bit better. Very enjoyable graphical experience with even a 2060. If you just put the settings down a little bit, you'll be able to handle it, especially at 1080p and 1440p. You certainly don't need a 3090 to be able to enjoy it. Now, most games are not going to be as demanding as something like Cyberpunk 2077. So for the most part, I really don't think you're going to have any type of major issue with even something from the 20 series. What's the point of having an extremely powerful graphics card if the games just don't take advantage of all that power right now? And while they may continue to come in the future, I think at this point, if you still have a 20 series GPU, especially if it's a 2070, 2080, 2080 Ti, I think for the most part, you're going to be more than fine. Of course, the 30 series has better performance, but I'm going to say that's better for the people chasing either really high frame rates in competitive games, or if you really want to max out your graphics at 4K or something like that, then yes, you probably will need at least a 3080 or 3080 Ti if you want to have all the visual eye candy. But the question here is if you can skip it and if you're going to really see a big detriment to doing so, and those people are going to be slightly in a different camp. They're willing to pay maybe the scalper or more high prices for their GPU in order to be able to get that experience. For most people with a 20 series GPU, I say you can probably certainly hold off a little while longer, perhaps even until RTX 4000 is released. That way, hopefully by then, prices will be stable for RTX 3000, and you may even be able to skip a generation and get something that performs really good for the money. Now, what about if you have a significantly older GPU, maybe a 10 series or even a 9 series? I would say anything from like the 9 series, like a 980, even a 980 Ti, you can get away with playing games still, but that's certainly starting to push it. those people, if you could find even a 3060 or a 3060 Ti, it's going to be pretty much a massive jump in performance. Now, from the 10 series, I would say a 1080, even a 1080 Ti, you can certainly still get away with it, much like the 2060, unless you want to play Cyberpunk 2077 or a really, really intense game like that. With a 1080 Ti, I do think you can still sort of skip a little bit and you'll be more than fine. Anything less, like even a 1070 or a 1060, with most games nowadays that are a little bit more demanding, you're definitely starting to push it. Now, does it mean that you have to get an RTX 3000 right away, especially coming from something older like that to something that right now is really expensive and really difficult to find? That's going to be up to you, but if you can hold off until possibly next year until the GPUs release, you certainly will get a better price on the current generation. If not, get lucky with availability of the new generation. Perhaps it'll be in stock by then as soon as it's released. I know that's a foreign concept right now, but in a year's time, maybe a lot of things will change and more GPUs will be on the market. So that's certainly something to think about. You can apply a lot of this to the AMD GPUs. The current generation is still a little expensive right now, the 6800 XT. So if you have something like a 5700 XT or something like that, I think you're still okay, at least for the time being. You should be able to hold off until the next generation comes around. Anything that's too much older, you certainly will start to push sort of the threshold for what's acceptable in the game, unless you're going to play everything on medium and low at 1080p. But then once again, you do want at least graphical experience that's going to match up with some of the consoles. So another option to actually skipping the RTX 3000, what if you game on a console? PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X, while they're still out of stock and difficult to find, the systems, even when they're a little bit over their MSRP, as a package are still considerably less expensive than perhaps a comparable gaming PC at this point. They do have some pretty powerful hardware. In fact, even the Xbox, a lot of games that you play on there, you can actually still save and later on play on PC. So there's a lot of interchangeability happening there. PlayStation 5 as well, you have a lot of very, very good games that are exclusive to the console. So that's something not only to keep in mind, but I've seen a lot of my viewers give up on certain GPUs and just sort of use the PlayStation and the Xbox as sort of a gaming machine until either prices come down, something else comes out in the future like the RTX 4000, hopefully with a better price to performance ratio at the initial launch instead of an inflated MSRP. So something like that, if you have sort of a GPU right now that's just not going to do it for you, it's not going to let you play sort of really, really good games that you want at, max settings. If you're in that situation, perhaps it may make some sense to temporarily use a PlayStation 5, Xbox. You can always use them together. I like to play consoles myself. I don't think it's any worse a lot of times than a PC. Of course, on a PC, you can max out your graphics. You can customize a lot more. Certainly, it is the superior experience, but for the cost that you're getting, especially if you can't get a current next generation GPU at a fair price, I'm all for it. I think it makes sense. If you want to be happy playing on a console, go ahead. And then eventually when things get better, you're always going to be pulled back to the PC anyway. If you're a real enthusiast, if you like tinkering with your PC, that's always going to be there as well. So to summarize, a lot of people have a bad experience with the current generation GPUs, and I really don't blame you, because right out of the gate, we saw like a $699 MSRP for a 3080. Everybody really loved the performance of the 3080. They loved that initial price, but that quickly turned into a very, very bad situation for gamers, simply because they were not able to actually get that GPU at that price. Very quickly, you guys know the history, prices became inflated, and even though initially the idea was good, we were promised one thing, then it seems like we have to pay 2 or 3 times the price in some cases to be able to get that performance. So that soured a lot of people with the current generation. Same will hold true for some of the AMD GPUs. They suffered pretty much the same stock availability and pricing issues. So a lot of people think, I'm going to skip this generation. I've seen it a lot in my comments. They want to skip this generation and wait for either the next generation to have a better launch, or at least when that comes out, the current generation will be cheaper for them to be able to upgrade. So we will have to see what happens, but if you guys are skipping the current generation, I really don't blame you. It's been a very, very messy couple of months, and there's certainly other options to get your game on. 20 series GPUs, even though they're a little overpriced now if you don't have one already, or even consoles do give a pretty good gaming experience while you're waiting for the rest of the market to sort of settle down and for things to come back to normal again. Alright guys, remember to smash that like button. Let me know what you think of the situation. Are you skipping the RTX 3000 series in general? Are you waiting for next generation, or just for the price to stabilize and come down a little bit more? And I'll see you guys on the next video.